Hi, my name is Kim Dinwiddie, and I'm with the SEC Small Business Advocacy team, where I support the office's outreach and engagement strategy. Welcome to another installment of our Let's Talk Small Business series. I'm joined by Lisa Shimkat, Board Chair for America's Small Business Development Centers and State Director for America's SBDC Iowa. Lisa also previously served on the SEC's Advisory Committee for Small and Emerging Companies. Hi, Lisa. Thanks for joining us.
Hello. Glad to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Great. Well, before we get started, I do have to give the standard SEC disclaimer that, as you know, everything that I say today is on my own behalf from my position in the Office of the Advocate for Small Business and does not necessarily reflect the views of the Commission, the commissioners, or my colleagues on the staff. Lisa, it's so good to see you. Last time we saw each other was at the annual America's SBDC conference. And I'll just pause and say SBDC is Small Business Development Centers. So for anyone watching, I think we'll say that acronym a lot during the conversation. So just want to make sure that's clear. But anyways, at the conference, I have to say I was struck by just the enthusiasm and the excitement and really the commitment of the Small Business Development Center professionals that were there, working together, learning from each other, all to support small business owners and entrepreneurs. And you're an integral part of that. So can you please introduce yourself and talk about your role with America's SBDC and, what this network does to support small businesses?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I am State Director of America's SBDC, Small Business Development Centers in Iowa. And we have been around in Iowa for over 40 years, but the Small Business Development Center networks have been around much longer. They were originally developed to be an outreach of the Small Business Administration, kind of the boots on the ground to help those entrepreneurs and small business owners discover what they could do, what they could be. And our role is to really advocate for them, to figure out what they need to get to that next step, or maybe realize that that next step is taking a pause. And you mentioned the excitement and being around all of those folks. We had over 1,500 folks at the conference, and they were business counselors, they were leadership people, and each of them have that commitment to helping small businesses succeed throughout the nation. And that's what's so exciting. And you get caught up in it. You really do.
Yeah.
As far as my role on the nationwide side, we really try to work with the individual states who provide that one-on-one counseling at no cost to entrepreneurs and small business owners. There could also be workshops on finance, technology, how to utilize AI, how do I expand my marketing, or how do I take my product to market? Do I need to get a patent? How do I engage with an investor? I mean, there are so many questions out there, and truly, an entrepreneur coming into the scene can't know all the answers, but they have an idea of what some of those first questions are. And I think that's also a valuable part of what we do, is we help them also say, you know what, you may not ask this question, but this is something else you need to know. So our role on each of our states that are out there, there are 63 networks nationwide, including Puerto Rico, Guam, Northern Marianas, and the Pacific Islands. In our role is to figure out what the new things are that small businesses need. Maybe there are regulations that we need to help walk them through. But at the heart of our efforts is really getting across that small businesses are the backbone of the American economy. And whether it's initiatives like the Shop Iowa program here in Iowa, or through national partnerships that we have, we're really committed nationwide to ensuring that small businesses have a voice at the table and that they get the resources that they need. And this is why partnering with you and your team is so important and integral in that.
Yes, absolutely. And so many great points that you made there, Lisa. And I think sometimes one of the hurdles that we find is just for folks to even know that these organizations exist and that they're there and can be tapped into. So I'm hoping that this conversation helps shed more light for folks who aren't aware of the network. It's an extensive network. It's geographically, as you mentioned, but also in terms of those services that the centers provide. You mentioned a few examples. Could you walk us through, if I'm an early stage starting a new business, or maybe a business that's maybe looking to grow, How do the services differ for the different stages in the life cycle?
Absolutely, absolutely. So let's start with a business that is starting up. We're going to work with them on their strategy development. We're going to work with them on market identification. What is your product and who is your customer? An example I actually used today at a presentation I did earlier was I asked everybody, okay, who here is wearing shoes? And of course, we all raised our hand. And then I said, if I sell shoes, are all of you my customer? And a couple folks immediately said, well, yes. And I said, no, you're not all my customer because we all bought shoes for a different reason, a different purpose, and probably from a different place. And that's the way it is with a small business owner too, especially somebody, an entrepreneur coming into the scene. You want to be all things to everyone, but you can't. So you need to figure out who is truly my target market, who is truly the decision maker to make that purchase, and then taking it one step forward. Can I make money at it? If you can't make money at it, then you need to rethink your business model. So we also work with them on, workshops on starting that business, helping with financial projections.
Yeah.
Is this going to be feasible? After my friends and family buy from me, are there others that can help me support this business up? So it's a lot of the, guiding them through business planning, market research, financial projections, and refining that business model. Maybe navigate some of the licensing that may happen out there, registrations, and what are the funding options? Because so many times we have folks saying, hey, where's the free money? And we have to stop the conversation right there and say, you know what? There's not the free money out there that you think there is. However, let's put together a solid plan so we can go for additional financing, whether it's traditionally through a lender of some sort or maybe through a VC firm. Now, for an established business, it is different. You hit it on the head. It's completely different. There are some overlaps, though, but we talk more about growth strategy, scaling. And what we're starting to see here, though, in the Midwest, and I think actually across the nation, is that business transition. What's going to happen? Is it going to be sold? Is it going to go to a key employee? What about a family member? And over the last 4 years, we've seen a lot of business owners exiting because they're looking at a lifestyle change. So we talk more about, how do we maybe look at additional markets? Because if you're going to exit your business, we want to maximize the wealth for you exiting that business and make sure that it will be profitable for the next person taking that business on. Other things we talk about too, government contracting, technology, incorporating AI. 5 years ago, we had people asking us, do I need to do all this social media stuff? And we looked at them and said, well, you don't have to, but if you want to be here in 5 years, you might want to think about it. That's the stage that we're at with AI now. How do I incorporate AI? What do I need to be careful with? Because with anything new for a business, whether it's a brand new startup or an existing business, incorporating something in needs to be well thought out. We all know, though, best laid plans. You could do all the planning in the world and something comes in. But that's where, at least doing that planning, you're understanding things that are important to your business, items that you need to pay attention to, and then how to position yourself for tomorrow so you can have that sale of the business or that transition to someone else.
Wow, that's so helpful. I mean, it really lays out that there's a little something for everybody there. If you've got a specific issue that needs, some attention, and just like along your life cycle, you can take use of these resources at the centers. That's great. You're located in Iowa, the state director for SBDC Iowa. So, what are some common challenges that the centers help address in your state that may also be common for other small businesses owning and operating in the Midwest or in other non-traditional capital raising hubs?
Oh, sure. Great question. Small businesses in Iowa, and I'm actually going to venture and say probably the Midwest, and maybe even states that have that rural element, face a lot of specific challenges that maybe are a little bit more distinct from those traditional, capital access heavy states. So one of them, the first one is that access to capital. It is something that is always top of mind. There are programs out there. Small Business Administration has programs. USDA has programs. Treasury has programs through their state small business credit initiative. But more so, though, in rural areas, you look at the opportunity of access to capital utilizing revolving loan funds, whether that comes through, name a federal agency. We kind of call it the alphabet soup of revolving loan funds out there. But just trying to figure out how we can stack things up so that the bank has what they need to be able to, meet with their regulators and say, hey, this was a good investment. But also that it is good for the small business owner, because they need to be able to pay that debt service while still expanding or growing that business and hopefully not burning themselves out. Another challenge we have, quite frankly, is workforce availability. I remember years ago, probably 20 years ago, I was at a conference out in California, and I said, what are you guys doing out here with regards to the brain drain? And they said, what brain drain? Oh, okay, well, that was a Midwest thing. We had a lot of people leaving the Midwest because whether it was because of the winters, because of, wow, there's nothing to do, but there's so many things to do. And while we have the workforce challenges, we have an unemployment rate that is right around the 3% and sometimes has gone lower. It is a challenge for businesses, and especially in rural areas. Now, what has helped has been technology, because it has allowed us to do things like we're doing today. We are, in a platform where we are in 2 different states, 3 if you count the people putting the production together. And it gives us that opportunity to connect, to talk, and figure out what we can do to help others. So the workforce availability is a second one. Another one that may not seem like one that has been on the radar before, but childcare. Childcare is tremendously challenging right now, because you could have people that want to work for your small business or your company, whether it's manufacturing or service-based businesses, but if they cannot find childcare or access to childcare, it's a game changer. So we do have, in our state and several other states, the SBDCs have really taken on some of the challenges when it comes to childcare to see what we can do to help set up childcare centers. We have clients who are trying to set some up. State incentives have been out there in many Midwest states. But that has been a challenge that probably wasn't even on our radar 20 years ago.
So interesting.
Yeah. And we still have the supply chain. But I would also argue 4 years ago, we said supply chain disrupt many industries, and I 100% agree with that. We are 4 years later. And if a company has not figured out how to diversify that supply chain to be able to meet some of the current needs, I think they might have some operational efficiencies that they really need to hone in on. But it can be daunting for a small business owner. If one of your biggest vendors in the supply chain doesn't want to do smaller orders, then it becomes cumbersome and your margin starts to shrink. The last one I want to talk about it before I get into the regulations is quite frankly natural disasters. That is something that we've dealt with here in the Midwest. We had 3 between tornadoes and floods. However, everyone knows that the hurricanes that went through the Southeast, and the devastation on a small business is tremendous, because remember, that small business owner not only provides goods and service to their community potentially, but also maybe their state or nationally, but they are also the philanthropic hub for a small community in a rural area. Who do we go to first when we need a fundraiser or we need something to be donated? It's that small business owner, and they really are that backbone of that community, and they band together. But when we have a natural disaster, sometimes their home is impacted, their business is impacted, and many times insurance doesn't always cover getting you back on your feet. And so trying to navigate some of those things, I would say those would probably be my top ones over the last year. Now, regulations. There are regulations that we help small businesses with. Corporate transparency is one that actually is at top of mind today because of, we're coming up on the end of the year. And we have a lot of businesses that are still asking us, what does that mean? And that's scary because the fines could really push a small business to the other side of not being able to be competitive or to be able to be sustainable. So when regulations come out, we really want to try to focus on, are they right sized? Do they make sense? Because regulations do have a purpose. At the same time, we want to make sure that they are not something that eliminate that small business owner when it comes to our nation.
Yeah, well, so many things to think about, and you mentioned capital raise, and you mentioned the impact of natural disasters, and we know that capital raising can be a challenge for rural businesses. In fact, our office, as you know, reports on data that sheds light on this issue, as well as challenges for diverse, women-owned, and naturally disaster-impacted businesses. In a report that we put out annually each December. So, just a quick plug for that resource. And speaking of resources, while I was at the SBDC conference, I spoke with a business advisor, and he was from Iowa's SBDC, actually, now that I think of it. And he was a former entrepreneur, and he was describing some of the challenges of something we've touched on earlier in the conversation, is that one thing that was really tough was finding the resources and knowing where to go to find them. And this resonated because we hear this a lot. And again, as you know, we have the SEC has lots of educational resources. I mentioned the report. We have videos and one pagers and all that good stuff. But I want to make sure that folks also know how to find the SBDC resources and can kind of sort through some of these issues that you're describing with an advisor or consultant. So how would someone watching go about working with an SBDC, and how do you find a center that's local to you?
Absolutely. The first thing, honestly, is to go to a search engine and just type in Small Business Development Center near me. That's probably the quickest. It's going to pull up the state SBDC or Small Business Development Center. And many of us have the software, or I would say all of us have the software that once you click on request counseling, it will automatically give you the opportunity to select the one nearest you and then get that appointment set up. Now, we can do appointments by phone, Zoom, face-to-face. It is truly all up to you. The nice thing, too, is we're able to utilize software. So if you can be located in a completely different state, we have entrepreneurs and small business owners located in 13 different states, just ones that Iowa is helping because they may be getting ready to move to Iowa.
Oh, wow.
And so that's what they want to make sure is that they hit the regulations in our state, and they're making sure that they get things set up according to the way our structure is within our state. They can also go to America's SBDC, which is our national association, and they can search for the SBDC that is nearest them. And as I said, our services are at no cost when it comes to that one-on-one counseling. Now, there are workshops as well. And the nice thing, too, if you do find your statewide SBDC or Small Business Development Center, many of them also have online workshops. Many of the workshops are free, whether it's government contracting, whether it's pointing to you guys there at the SEC and pulling some of those one-pagers. But don't be afraid to ask. And really, just throw it in that search engine. And I know that we'll make sure to have all of the links up at the end of this as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to put that in our credits, if you will, at the end of the video. And I've noticed there's some great on-demand training on some of the state sites. So many good resources there. Okay, Lisa, lightning round question for you, a trivia question. Which state has the most small business development centers?
All right, I did. I will be honest, I looked it up. But California, actually, I have it right here on my sheet. They boast the most SBDCs with over 40 centers across the state. Here in Iowa, we have 15. But in California, it reflects the large and diverse business community because they have some very urban and very rural areas across the state. But I have a counter fun fact for you as well. America's SBDC network nationwide serves over 1 million small businesses annually, making it the largest and most comprehensive small business assistance network in the United States. So from rural towns to urban hubs, there is an SBDC ready to help wherever you are.
Wow. And that's an excellent point to end on, Lisa. This was so fun. Thank you so much for your time. And I really do
Absolutely.
hope that those watching will take advantage and check out the resources that the centers have to offer.
We appreciate it, and we appreciate the partnership.
Thank you so much.